Honorable members, the Honorable Mr. President,
Dear colleagues, would you please be seated? Thank you.
La séance est reprise.
The session is resumed. I wish to invite the clerk to read the order of the day. Mr. Clerk, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. President. The item in our order is the following: a presentation and debate on the report on the advocacy toolkit on strengthening the legal and policy framework for safe abortions in Africa. Presentation and debate on the report on the advocacy toolkit on strengthening the legal and policy framework for safe abortions in Africa. I would like to invite the Chairperson of the Permanent Committee on Health, Labor and Social Affairs to give his presentation. Madam Chairperson, you have the floor. And of the Maputo Protocol in our national laws. This item is very important in the advocacy we have to do. We have made some headway, and we need to hail this in some countries I'm going to refer to. When we take the example of North Africa, we congratulate Tunisia. In West Africa, we congratulate Cape Verde. In East Africa, we have the example of Ethiopia, which is an important one. Also in Southern Africa, where we have the lowest rate. We hail the reforms carried out in South Africa, the reforms carried out in Mozambique, and so on and so forth. To this effect, it is clear that countries where reforms have been carried out and laws amended, the rate of maternal mortality relating to unsafe abortion has gone down. The second element is the legal obstacles, political and administrative obstacles to legal abortion in Africa and the penalization of abortion in Africa. As I indicated earlier on, all countries where the criminalization of abortion persists, the rate of maternal morbidity and related to unsafe abortion is high. We have to act in this regard. The third element is the mandate of the Pan-African Parliament and the mandate of national parliaments when it comes to the Maputo Protocol. We need to internationalize the Maputo Protocol and we need to invite countries to ratify it. PAP needs to be involved in asking countries which have not ratified the protocol to do so. The fourth element is state obligations on health and rights in the area of sexuality, reproduction, and safe abortion. What is the purpose of this tool? We are going to talk about the general objectives and the specific objectives. As regards the general objectives, the aim is to assist PAP in reinforcing the legal and political frameworks related to safe abortion in Africa. The specific objectives now. The tool is designed to help the Pan-African Parliament to engage the political actors and the political leaders about the need for a progressive legal framework on abortion in order to reduce mortality and morbidity in Africa. This can be avoided, and this is due to unsafe abortion. This will enable us to establish laws and policies on the basis of an approach based on human rights, to amend legislation, policy, and administrative repressive practices in line with Article 14.2 of the Maputo Protocol. What are the tools that the Pan-African actors can use in interacting with the various actors and the stakeholders? To this effect, there are 5 elements, essential elements. First of all, we need to have information on unsafe abortion in Africa, information on the document on the best practices in the area of legislation on safe abortion. The third element is to have the roadmap for the use of these modes. Also, information needs to be sent on members of parliament on the identified themes. 5, note on collaboration with the media in promoting progressist practices. 6, an approach based on human rights when it comes to the formulation of laws and policies on health in the areas of sexuality and reproduction. And finally, legal and safe abortion. Presentation on training, health and sexuality and reproduction rights and safe abortion are addressed here. We need to have an approach based on human rights in producing laws and policies on health and rights in the areas of sexuality and reproduction and safe and legal abortion. The use of the tool itself. The tool enables the Pan-African Parliament to identify the actors that need to be mobilized to carry out the legal reforms in the area of safe and legal abortion, ways and means to ensure that the actors participate, and what they can do to promote legal and political frameworks that are avant-gardists. The latest data on the impact on the penalization of abortion on maternal mortality is needed. I talked earlier on about some statistics. The tool will give us messages, ready-made messages, and this will enable us to carry out the activities to reach the set objectives. The various chapters include the following. First of all, how can we have an advocacy strategy? Secondly, how can we make the advocacy strategy operational on the basis of an action plan, and so on. The strategy aimed at making the main actors participate, the justification that they can carry out in the area of safe abortion. This will involve political decision makers, MPs, legal authorities, and others, community leaders, traditional leaders, the media, health professionals, and technocrats, national institutions on human rights defenders, and legal experts. Ladies and gentlemen, the vice presidents, members of Parliament, I think that the Committee on Health, Labour and Social Affairs, the Committee on Gender Equality with Africa Alliance, have committed themselves to a dynamics that needs to be sustained by the Pan-African Parliament and all the honourable members here present today. One single example can edify us here. Let me give the example of Ethiopia, where the committee carried out a field visit. Statistics show the following. Before legal reforms, 32% of maternal deaths were linked to unsafe abortion. After the reform in 2005, the latest statistics show this rate has gone down from 32% to less than 10%, and it will be up to you to interpret these figures. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, microphone, Mr. President. Microphone, please. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Dear colleagues, I was reading the two reports, the report submitted by the Chairperson and I think to save time, we can have the two presentations, and then you will be able to ask questions to the two presenters following their presentations. Adopted. Mr. Clark, you are kindly invited to read out the fifth element included in our order. Thank you. The fifth item is presentation and debate on the report of the consultative meetings to promote the ratification of the Maputo Protocol in Tunisia. I invite the chairperson of the Permanent Committee on Gender, Family, Youth and People with Disability to make his presentation. I believe that we changed the name of this committee in French, at least to mean people with disability. You have the floor, madam.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
Honorable President, members of the Bureau, dear colleagues. Good afternoon to all of you. I wish to present to you the report of the consultative meeting to promote the ratification and the implementation of the Maputo Protocol in Tunisia. This was carried out from the 3rd to the 7th of July 2017. Within the framework of the promotion of the ratification and the implementation of the Maputo Protocol on women's rights, African women's rights, the Committee on Gender, Family, Youth and People with Disability carried out a series of consultative meetings in 5 pilot countries representing the 5 regions. After Rwanda in East Africa, Senegal in West Africa, Tunisia was the 3rd country to be visited, and it welcomed the PAP delegation. The general objective was to share the Tunisian experience in the area of promoting women's rights. The specific objective of that interaction was to share experience on legislative measures aimed at promoting gender equality and achieving women's rights, also to exchange views on the lessons learned from the consultative meetings held in Rwanda and Senegal, also to consider the challenges faced by women in implementing their rights in Tunisia, especially with the influence of culture and religion, on the basis of the approach adopted by the organizations of the civil society and the other actors to overcome the challenges that impede various legislations on women's rights, also to sensitize Tunisia on the existence of the Maputo Protocol and its scope of implementation. Mr. President, the PAP delegation met with the Tunisian parliament to express its gratitude to the government for the facilities provided to us in Tunisia. The Speaker of the Parliament asked our colleague, Mrs. Jamila Sikski, who was with us during our meeting, and she made it possible to visit the following structures. The Committee on International Relations and the parliamentarian group, these were encouraged to establish the caucus for women. As regards the government, we exchanged with the Minister of Justice. We also met with the Minister for Women. And then the Ministry for External Relations. Tunisia has 40 chambers, and 20 of those chambers are headed by women. As regards the civil society, the Tunisian experience needs to be hailed. In the National Union of Women, the Journalists Union, all these organizations cover the entire territory and carry out coordinated actions to promote women's rights. In this regard, the delegation was informed that the civil society participates in the debate relating to the consideration of laws in plenary sessions, and it also deals with issues of human rights and gender issues. Tunisia has established a center for women who suffer from domestic violence. This is run by the Ministry for Women. The aim is to provide support to women in distress and to rehabilitate it. This experience can be replicated in our countries to give hope to women suffering from domestic violence. We need to indicate that Tunisia is one of the African countries where human rights go back to the beginning of independence. Tunisia is considered one of African countries having the best results in the area of promoting and protecting women's rights. However, the equitable representation of women in all national structures remains a challenge, a major challenge, particularly with regard to high-level political positions and women's participation in decision-making. Mr. President, dear colleagues, we observed an increase in the rate of women's participation in political life since the Tunisian revolution. This percentage is about 20% for political positions, high-level political positions, and 31% for municipal and regional representations. Women have continued making their voice heard for the respect of their rights and the achievement of gender equality. To illustrate the skills and the commitment of women to reduce such inequality, the delegation was informed that the rate of success in school exams is higher among girls, with 63% success rate at the baccalaureate against 37% for men. A recent study carried out recently has shown that the rate of corruption is 65% among men against 35% for women. The percentage of magistrates is 62% for women against 30% for men. 62% for women, 38% for men. In spite of the role played by Tunisian women in creating wealth at the level of 70%, domestic violence is still very high, with a rate of 50%. Hence, the creation of support centers to provide support to victims. The government has not ratified the Maputo Protocol yet, in spite of significant results achieved in the region of North Africa. While we congratulate the Tunisian government in its efforts to reinforce laws on protecting women, the debate between PAP delegation and the various Tunisian stakeholders made it possible to sensitize MPs about the need to ratify the Maputo Protocol and to create a women's caucus within the parliament to promote the advocacy action. Mr. President, dear colleagues, the Tunisian authorities have assured us about the imminent ratification of the Maputo Protocol. In conclusion, conclusions and recommendations. Now, at the end of our mission, the delegation held a press conference to express PAP gratitude to the Tunisian authorities for the warm welcome accorded to them and to appreciate the progress made in the area of protecting women's rights. Following the various consultations carried out, the delegation produced the following recommendations. 1. Ratification of the Maputo Protocol. Second, creation of a women's caucus in the parliament. 3, reinforcement of legislation in the area of women's empowerment to oblige the authorities to respect such rights. The institutionalization of educational programs for judges and improvement of school curricula by including the gender dimension. Initiation of debates within political parties to ensure gender equality and to improve women's representation in decision-making positions. Establishment of participatory democracy through the choice of representatives. Reinforcement of collaboration with the civil society, anticipation of on laws to avoid disasters, review of religious dogma that do not meet the expectations of women when it comes to social development. I thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you immensely, Chairperson. Honorable members, I'll now open the floor. The two chairs will take down the questions addressed to them and would respond. I will start off with the first list. Honorable Kose Julius Makwa from Lesotho, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to thank my chair for a good presentation. Mr. President, like my chairperson said earlier, the issue of abortion is so sensitive and it needs to be handled with maximum care. Mr. President, to legalize abortion in the African countries is a challenge because of our cultures and laws which are too old. Mr. President, on top of this report of a Committee of Health, Labor and Social Affairs, I'm aware that there was a summit of African leaders on safe legal abortion on the 19th and 20th of January 2017 in Addis Ababa to develop strategies to advance the right to safe legal abortion as a fundamental women's human right in Africa. Mr. President, I have noticed that the African Commission on Human People's Rights is implementing the campaign for decriminalization of abortion in Africa. Mr. President, there are so many reasons of which I can not mention, which can make a woman to decide to make abortion. Mr. President, it is high time that we, the members of this august House, urge the African governments and the policymakers to ratify without reservations the Maputo Protocol and implement it. By amending the restrictive abortion laws and releasing all women and girls and healthcare practitioners who are incarcerated as a result of punitive abortion laws. Mr. President, I wish to urge the members to individually and collectively mobilize our knowledge, our resources, and networks to ensure that every woman and girl has the right to make decisions about her body, her life, and her future. Mr. President, in order to make sure that no lives of women and girls lost because of illegal and unsafe abortion, the African countries should remove all policies and administrative barriers to women and girls' access to safe abortion services. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. And now I want to give the floor to Honorable Justine Abojete from Benin. Benin. I want to give the floor to Honorable Jean-Patrice France Curie from Mauritius.
Merci, Honorable.
Thank you, Honorable President. Allow me, first of all, to commend the Honorable Member, Dr. Zalikatu Diallo, for such an excellent presentation of the document, the toolkit, in favor of legal and safe abortion in Africa. And let me also commend the chairperson of the Gender Committee for her brilliant presentation as well. Indeed, Honorable President, this document presented by Honorable Zalikatu Diallo comes at the heels of a field trip that was conducted by the Committee on Health and Social Affairs last July in Ethiopia. This trip gave us the opportunity to observe all what has been done over the recent years to significantly cut down maternal mortality resulting from unsafe and clandestine abortions. Indeed, Honorable President, our trip to Ethiopia enabled the Health Committee to better understand the toolkit, the advocacy toolkit regarding legal and safe abortions in Africa. As Honorable Zalikatu underscored, this toolkit is a guide for members of Parliament of PAP so that we are enlightened on the scale of unsafe and clandestine abortions in Africa and on the impact of laws, repressive laws on maternal morbidity and mortality arising from unsafe abortions. This toolkit can also be used as an awareness tool for all stakeholders in promoting reforms in the legal and social sector, and also for the general public. The Maputo Protocol has been ratified by only 38 states out of 55. So we still have about 30% of states who haven't done so yet, and those countries that have ratified are obligated to comply, to protect and implement the reproductive and sexual health rights of women. In that regard, safe abortion services should comply with the standards regarding access, availability, acceptance, and especially high-quality care. Therefore, the Maputo Protocol is the first treaty that recognizes abortion as a human right and urges all states to take all the appropriate and requisite measures to protect the health and sexual health rights of women by allowing abortions in cases of sexual-based violence, incest, or when the life of the pregnant women or the fetus is in peril. In the Mauritius, Mr. President, in 2012, that is the then government, amended the penal code to legalize abortion under specific conditions as required under Article 14, sub 2 of the Maputo Protocol. However, it is obvious, Mr. President, that every country has its peculiarities, has its religious beliefs, and their own realities. But what we must not lose sight of is that every year thousands of women die in Africa owing to complications resulting from unsafe, unattended, and clandestine abortions. Let us respond. Let us act. And before concluding, Mr. President, I would like to register that the adoption of the toolkit, whose official launch will probably be done next March. Thereafter, the next step would be to design a model law which states would rely upon to implement reforms on their existing laws. Thank you. Thank you, indeed, honorable member.
From Uganda.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, for giving me this opportunity to express the position of my country. And I'm saying the position of my country, meaning that the position I'm expressing is not my own position. As the chairperson said, and some of my colleagues who have spoken, the subject matter is indeed very sensitive. Mr. President, abortion, whether safe or legal, in the African context is abortion. The good news, however, is that Uganda is among the 38 states that has ratified the Maputo Protocol. That's good news. I thought members would clap, but they're keeping quiet. Yeah, it's among the 38 members. Yeah. Bad news. You know, there are my sisters here who are waiting to hear what I'm saying. Bad news. Uganda, though it has ratified the protocol, it had strong reservations on Article 14, which deals with abortion. My president has strong views. Our religious leaders, all of them, our culture, all had strong reservations. And these reservations were expressed and passed over. And there are laws in my country that criminalizes abortion. I am a very strong advocate for women's rights, and I'm an activist. But when it comes to abortion, I have strong reservations. Strong ones. And I'm known in my country. I started a committee on equal opportunities. I chaired it for 7 years. But when there are other issues which I think that they are very sensitive, and when they are dealing with my country, I think this is an area where we need, as one colleague said, to deeply think about it. So under that spirit and under that background, with due respect, I do appreciate under the spirit the movers and the presenters of this draft project. But I want to disassociate myself from the draft, and I want to disassociate my country, Uganda, from this project. I thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I want to give the floor to Honorable Babiyek Veronica Kadogo from Uganda. I want to give the floor to Honorable Senator Paulette Mugengi from Gabon.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. President. I listened keenly to the brilliant presentation on strengthening the legal and policy framework for safe abortions in Africa. Quite a sensitive issue. In that regard, I felt concerned in my country. Maternal, child, and infant health is one of the key health priorities of government, and reproductive health is also part and parcel of that policy. Therefore, abortion is not a taboo. It should be conducted strictly for purely medical reasons and under the provisions of the Maputo Protocol, specifically Article 14, in my humble view. While we should legislate on access to safe abortion, but more is to be done on access to contraceptives and family planning, rather than leaving it an open-ended matter. And the provisions could be laudable, provided that it does not promote excesses by health personnel, women, and especially girls who are in the throes of unwanted pregnancies, and the corollary would be death, because the abortions can be committed in clandestine and unsafe environments. So, should we strengthen the legal environment for abortions, or should we enhance the legal environment for unwanted or risky pregnancies? I would like to conclude, Mr. President, to say that for those who are believers, abortion is tantamount to getting rid of human life. Thank you.
Monji Rawi from Tunisia. I want to give the floor to Honorable Sey Ahmed Mugeya from Mauritania.
Merci. Thank you, Mr. President. I am part of the Health Committee, and I would like to say that we have to be honest with ourselves. What is contained in the recommendations cannot be defended before my parliament. And we pretend that we are adopting laws, and if we commit ourselves here, it is because we want to defend ideas that we've agreed to rather than cut corners. As a matter of fact, abortion will, as rightly said by the previous speaker, will have to deal with religious issues. In Islam, abortion is tantamount to a crime, and it would have to deal with social challenges and even the medical staff will be up in arms, and believers who are medical personnel are not under obligation to conduct abortion, and if it is in extreme circumstances, they would refer the case to other medical practitioners. So we need to tailor the law to our societies, to our beliefs, and to our countries. Otherwise, it would never work. Abortion can be warranted in cases of rape, incest, of young girls under 14, or congenital fetal malformation. But in cases of abortion, the clergy will be up in arms. In Islam, it can be said that it's not a crime if it is done before the 3rd month of pregnancy. It is a sin, but it's not a crime. So you would need to negotiate with the clergy, and you have to draw a line between abortion and safe abortion, because after the 4th month there are greater risks, and therefore you need to deter. And as the honorable member said, we have to prevent, and we need to have laws in our countries to promote contraception, promote access to girls to contraceptive pills, abortion, or the morning after pills, but discreetly. But you also need to discourage all unacceptable or deviant behavior. We are for this toolkit, but it must be tailored to our countries. Otherwise, we would have a barrage of rejection. Thank you. Thank you indeed. I'll now give the floor to Honorable Geoffrey Lugwangwa from Zambia. I'll give the floor to Honorable Evelyn Butoye from Burundi. Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the floor. Let me start off by commending the two presenters for the quality of their presentations, which were, to say the least, brilliant. Mr. President, safe abortion, in my view, is a sensitive matter, and as I would say, I speak as a mother, as a woman, but also as a representative of the people. I do not see how I can talk about safe abortion in my country. However, regarding sexuality, it is in no way a taboo, at least in my country. Legal access to safe abortion remains a sensitive matter, to the extent that in my country, in Burundi, abortion is only done as a medical requirement. It is done under medical guidance. However, Mr. President, regarding women, remarkable efforts have been made in my country with a view to reducing maternal and child mortality. And let me report free health care to pregnant women, free health care to children under the age of 5. And there are support measures to this policy. You have health centers or clinics that have been built in all the identified areas. You also have schools and motivation to health personnel for an incentive for the quality of their services. Mr. President, it bears to report that in our capacity as members of Parliament, we contribute to mobilizing the population around sexual and reproductive health. But let us recall that abortion is a medical requirement where you have health risk, but we need to respect the life of the fetus and embryo. And let me say that every country has its own peculiarities and must be respected. Legalizing abortion in my country is construed as an incentive to the youth for sexual excesses, and we are promoting sexual abstinence to comply with our traditions and our mores and customs. Regarding the Maputo Protocol, I must state, Mr. President, that my country has still to ratify the protocol. Be that as it may, it has signed the protocol, and there are remarkable strides regarding women's rights, and the spin-offs are already visible because we have a constitution that recognizes a quota system. We have equal opportunities for men and women. We also have a law that was enacted on gender-based violence or violence against women. We also have women in all political decision-making circles. Thank you, Honorable Member. 30 seconds to go. We also have women in all decision-making circles. Even right here at the Pan-African Parliament, there are two women out of 5 representing Burundi, and we are representing our parliament. We have the Ministry of Women's Affairs and the Women's Forum and various fora for the promotion of women's rights in my country. Thank you. The next speaker would be Honorable Haidara Chata Sisi from Mala, Honorable Sidia S. Jata from the Gambia.
Thank you, Mr. President. As legislators, we must know and understand that legislation cannot and does not put an end to deep-seated traditional practices without harm. Mr. President, there exists in my country a female civil society which was founded in 1985 against harmful traditional practices. I was their chair for 10 years. From 1985 to now, they have been campaigning and sensitizing people against female genital mutilation. That is over 30 years ago. 30 years they have been sensitizing people, women themselves. It was just last year that a legislation was made against FGM in the Gambia. The very week in which that legislation was made, some people resorted to FGM. Of course, they were arrested and they were taken to court. This is showing clearly that deep-seated practices cannot just simply be ended by legislation without a foundation. What is then the way forward? The way forward, particularly the sensitive issue we are dealing with, that is abortion. Abortion in terms of norms, in terms of tradition, in terms of religion. In my country, it has been a hot debate among Islamic scholars, the issue of abortion. And they are still divided on the issue. So it means that even if we agree to make a legislation against illegal abortion, we have to have as a background intensive and extensive sensitization for a long period before we can legislate for that legislation to have any meaning at all. I must be understood. I am not for or I'm not against abortion, but I'm against legislating without creating a foundation for that legislation to have a meaning. And the way forward is we must sensitize the population on the issue before we can.
30 seconds. Thank you very much. La parole est à l'honorable.
I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Jean Eyegendong from Gabon. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I believe that I have no interest in fleshing out the argument made by the Honorable Mugenge, who is my compatriot, because she made the case eloquently, and I therefore fully endorse her position. Thank you. Thank you indeed. Dear colleague, I'd now like to give the floor to Honorable Glorious Merundia from Burundi.
La parole est à...
Honorable Gelas Daniel Ndabirabe from Burundi. Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the floor. I add my voice to the previous speakers who have commended the two presentations that have been delivered. It goes without saying that that the job was properly done, but these are matters that have raised quite some issues, as the others have rightly stated. And regarding my country, we have the first part that was properly canvassed by the Honorable Evelyn, my compatriot, and I'm going to add the following. Regarding the freedom of women to choose and make decisions regarding her sexuality, I cannot advocate nor defend that position in my country. However, there are some relevant issues in this Maputo Protocol. I would rather request PAP to review the Maputo Protocol and to allow the countries, the states, to sign with reservations, such that the Maputo Protocol has interesting things, but there are other issues that are not consistent with some realities, and especially with the countries concerned. And with this policy of reservations, if you would allow it, that may help the situation. Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Member. I'd like to give the floor to Mr. El Aji Diao Kante from the Guinea. Mr. President, thank you. I am not going to waive my right to speak. I would, however, like to commend the two presenters. First of all, because they are women and they are very eminent ladies, but also because the subject they delivered is also properly canvassed in the reports. But, Mr. President, when I looked through the report on strengthening the legal and policy frameworks for legal and safe abortions, I expected to see proposals whereby you'd have a meeting of ministries of health from various states to discuss the matter, and also to make a determination based on the views of experts. This is a framework, a policy and legal framework to discuss technical health matters. I wonder if we can actually legislate without the health experts and to seek to properly implement this policy. Second point on this report, Mr. President, I have read statistics on abortions, on safe abortions, and on illegal and clandestine abortions. And if we were to establish a legal and policy framework, I do not know what the statistics would say in the short term on our continent. And that is why I couldn't agree more with those who believe that we need to reflect on this matter better. I'll give it a second thought. Regarding our visit to Tunisia, it was a meeting to promote the ratification and the domestication of the Maputo Protocol. Mr. President, I was a bit lost to see how we would achieve these objectives, because this was an information visit, and going by the report, it was a visit of a delegation for information purposes and an exchange visit, and I think that it was quite successful. There were some contacts, but I do not see where domestication comes in, because Tunisia and other countries are already members of the African Union, and under which the Maputo Protocol was designed, and even if it has not been ratified by all members, it is an initiative of the African Union, and I wonder if the title is consistent with the body of the report. But that said, it is quite instructive regarding Tunisia. We commend Tunisia as we hailed the delegation for making the trip to Tunisia.
Honorable Martin Nisereche from Burundi. Now I give the floor to Honorable Mohamed Reza Kazem Utim from Mauritius.
Thank you, Mr. President. Whenever the question of abortion is invoked, there is necessarily a lot of passion about it. And when in 2012, Mauritius adopted the law which permitted abortion, which legalized abortion in certain limitative circumstances in line with the Maputo Protocol, there was also heated debate and passionate debate in chambers, so much so that the whips had to allow a free vote. MPs were allowed to vote not on party line, but according to their own conviction. Because we have to respect the conviction of others. Not all of us are pro-life, not all of us are pro-choice. Each one has its own argument. So this toolkit, I understand it, is to limit and help those countries who want to legalize abortion in limited circumstances. And in this respect, we must commend the committee for having come up with this toolkit to facilitate the implementation, the carrying out of legalized abortion in countries who have decided to allow abortion in limited cases. But Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, will this solve the problem? We are told that there are 6 million cases of abortion in Africa. We are told that there are 29,000 women who lose their lives every year through abortion. We are told that most of these women are less than 25 years old. Would the implementation of the Maputo Protocol and this toolkit solve the situation? What would happen to those cases which fall outside the limitative cases set out in the Maputo Protocol? We all know that if you have a lawful, if you have been raped or you have a valid reason to carry out an abortion, you would go to the medical centers. Most of the people who turn to illegal abortion is because they can't have a lawful abortion carried out. And will this toolkit help them? I don't think so. What we have to impress on our countries is, irrespective of whether the abortion is legal or illegal, we should give all the women post-abortion treatment. That is very important. All women who suffer from abortion, whether it is lawful or unlawful, should be given post-abortion treatment. Then we should sensitize people. We should try to aim at prevention. We should carry out sexual education. We should distribute contraceptive measures. We should give condoms at school if required. We should not turn a blind eye. We should responsibilize parents. We should help single mothers, help poor people. Because, Mr. Chairman and Mr. President, whatever our conviction about abortion is, abortion should never be a contraceptive method. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. La parole.
Thank you very much. The floor to Honorable Amosovic Badenu of Togo.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would rather not have spoken after listening to all the colleagues. However, I would say that in my country, the Maputo Protocol has been ratified, but I would say that it is not enforced comprehensively, because the protocol has two fundamental challenges. The first barrier has been properly canvassed, and that is religion, whether it is modern religion or traditional religion. In my country, specifically, the protocol has to, well, there's religion also, a religious aspect. The second challenge is the right of women to make decisions on their bodies, and in the instruments it is considered as a human right issue, and it also raises quite a challenge in my country. So I believe that there is still a long way to go regarding the implementation and domestication of the Maputo Protocol. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Marie-Claire Monti of Mauritius.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Thank you, Chairperson, for giving me the floor. I do not have much to say after having listened to the colleagues from my country, Honorable Ekira, Honorable Tim, and other speakers. However, allow me to say that I come from a multiracial, multicultural, multi-ethnic, and pluriligious country. So a law in that regard would change our habits. It would change our convictions. In the Parliament in 2012, as my colleagues announced, the law that was promulgated enabled abortion or allowed abortion for strictly medical reasons. So I repeat, it was strictly for medical conditions. And that said, Honorable President, I'd like to thank you. Thank you, Honorable colleague, Honorable Amumbi from Uganda.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Honorable President.
I would like to add my voice to thank the members and the chairperson for having made a very precise and direct presentation in regards to abortion laws in the continent. Mr. President, as a student of law, I know that any law of a national sovereignty, any international instrument which is not cognizant with the national laws of a country, the laws of the countries take precedence. And in this regard, the Maputo Protocol and Article 14.2, in Uganda specifically, our law is against abortion. And therefore, there is no way any other law can over or supersede the law of the state. That's the law of Uganda. And then, Mr. President, whereas Uganda is among the 37, like Honorable Nifa mentioned, that have ratified the Maputo Protocol, but it has also signed with reservation to Article 14.2c of the protocol because of the national legal laws. So in this particular context, I also know that Uganda is a religious founded nation with religious background. We have the Muslims, we have the Christians generally. And with that background, we believe that in the Bible, Genesis, in the book of Genesis, it's written that go produce and fill the world. And in that case, we cannot be the ones to terminate life of anybody by putting it into the laws. Because it's only God who can give life and terminate. And does not mean that a son of a rapist will be a rapist. That baby can be a president or can be anything. So I do not think that these are the urgent issues of the continent right now. Mr. President, instead of us struggling to legalize abortion, we should struggle to ensure that we adhere. Most countries should adopt the Abuja Declaration. The Abuja Declaration was talking about allocating 15% to health so that we have improved health facilities in our countries. We have mothers not dying giving birth. We should be asking ourselves now, how many countries have adopted to the Abuja Protocol of 15% allocation to health in order to address health-related challenges in our continent? Mr. President, as I conclude, we should run 1 minute, thank you.
1 minute is enough, 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Much obliged. We should rather promote, in the continent of Africa, would rather promote sexuality education so that our children grow up knowing the dangers and the disadvantages of engaging into sexuality behaviors early. For example, a colleague from Mauritius talked about condom uses in schools. That would be good, so that when you grow up, you know. When I was a student, my mom would even pack for me condoms, and didn't mean that I was sexually active, but just in case I'm raped, I could propose that let me use a condom so that I remain safe. Otherwise, this business of saying that we pass a law on abortion in